was supposed to be a celebration, her first wedding anniversary. Her husband had fallen asleep, and the night was quiet, until the door creaked open. The man standing there wasn't a stranger. He was family, someone she trusted all her life, someone who had been at her wedding, someone who had held her as a baby, someone who called her his favorite niece. But what makes this story even more haunting is that she was already in pain, physically and emotionally. She was on her menstrual flow that night, vulnerable, uncomfortable, in her own home, where she should have felt safest. And that was when the betrayal happened. This isn't fiction. It's a true story, shared for awareness and education, to help others recognize what silence can hide, to help you understand that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes, they look like family. Before we go on, please stay with us till the end. This story might help someone recognize the signs and get help before it's too late. If you believe in spreading awareness, hit subscribe, share this video, and let's break the silence together. Amelia grew up in what everyone called the perfect family. You know the kind: Sunday dinners around a big table, laughter that echoed through the hallways, birthday parties where cousins ran wild in the backyard. Her parents were loving, present, and protective. Her childhood was filled with warmth, and at the center of it all was her Uncle Donald. Donald wasn't just any uncle. He was the uncle, the one who always showed up, the one who fixed things when they broke, the one who brought gifts on holidays and told the best jokes at family gatherings. He was her father's younger brother, and the two were inseparable. Growing up, Amelia saw Donald almost every week. He would ruffle her hair, call her kiddo, and slip her a $20 bill when her parents weren't looking. He was safe. He was family. When Amelia met Nathan in college, Donald was one of the first people she introduced him to. Nathan loved him immediately. Donald had this way of making people feel comfortable, like you'd known him your whole life, even if you'd just met. At their wedding, Donald gave a toast that had everyone in tears, the good kind. He talked about watching Amelia grow up, about how proud he was of the woman she'd become, and how Nathan was lucky to have her. He hugged her tight that night and whispered, "I'll always be here for you, kiddo." And she believed him. The first year of marriage was everything Amelia had dreamed of. She and Nathan moved into a small apartment on the east side of town. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Nathan worked long hours as a junior architect, and Amelia had just started her job as an elementary school teacher. Life was busy, but it was good. They were building something together, a life, a future, a family. As their first anniversary approached, Amelia wanted to do something special. Nothing extravagant, just the two of them, a homemade dinner, and maybe a quiet evening watching the stars from their tiny balcony. Nathan agreed. He'd been stressed at work, pulling late nights on a big project, and they both needed the time to reconnect. The day of their anniversary, Nathan came home exhausted. They ate dinner together, shared a bottle of wine, and talked about everything and nothing. By 10 o'clock, Nathan was asleep on the couch, his head tilted back, his breathing slow and steady. Amelia smiled, covered him with a blanket, and went to the bedroom. She wasn't feeling well. Her period had started that morning, and the cramps were worse than usual. She took some ibuprofen, changed into her pajamas, and climbed into bed, hoping sleep would ease the discomfort. But sleep didn't come easily. She tossed and turned, the cramps gnawing at her abdomen, her mind restless. She thought about the past year, about all the little moments that had brought them to this point. She thought about her family, about how lucky she was to have people who loved her. She thought about Donald, about how he'd called earlier that day to wish them a happy anniversary. He'd been nearby, he said, and asked if he could stop by to drop off a gift. Amelia told him Nathan was tired, maybe another time. Donald laughed and said he understood. "I'm proud of you, kiddo," he'd said before hanging up. She didn't know that he was already on his way. It was just past midnight when Amelia heard the sound. A soft click, the front door opening. At first, She thought Nathan had woken up and gone outside for some air. But then she heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps moving through the apartment. Her heart quickened. She sat up in bed, her body tense, her ears straining to hear. The bedroom door opened, and there he was, Donald. Amelia's first reaction was confusion, not fear. "Uncle Donald?" she whispered, her voice groggy. "What are you doing here? How did you get in?" He stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the dim light from the hallway. He didn't answer right away, just stood there, watching her. Then he stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The click of the lock was soft, but in the silence of the room, it was deafening. "I told you I had a gift for you," he said, his voice low, almost gentle. But there was something in his tone that made Amelia's skin crawl. Something wrong. "Uncle Donald, it's late," she said, pulling the blanket up to her chest. "Nathan's asleep. You should come back tomorrow." He didn't move, just stood there, staring at her. And then he smiled. But it wasn't the smile she knew. It wasn't the warm, comforting smile of the uncle who had been there her whole life. This smile was different, cold, predatory. "I've waited a long time for this, Amelia," he said, taking a step closer. Her breath caught in her throat. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice trembling now. "Uncle Donald, you're scaring me. Please, just go." But he didn't go. He took another step, and another, until he was standing at the edge of the bed, looking down at her. She could smell the faint scent of cologne, the same one he'd worn for years, the same one that used to make her feel safe. "You're so beautiful," he said softly. "You've always been beautiful, even when you were little." Amelia's stomach turned. "Stop it," she whispered. "Please, stop." But he didn't stop. He reached out, his hand brushing against her arm. She flinched, pulling away, but there was nowhere to go. She was trapped between him and the wall, the blanket tangled around her legs. "Uncle Donald, I'm on my period," she said, desperation creeping into her voice. "I don't feel well. Please, just leave me alone." He laughed, a low, bitter laugh that made her blood run cold. "I know," he said. "I don't care." And then he grabbed her. What happened next? Amelia would spend years trying to forget. She tried to scream, but his hand clamped over her mouth. She tried to fight, but he was stronger. She tried to reach for her phone, but it was on the nightstand, just out of reach. She thought about Nathan, asleep on the couch just down the hall, and she wanted to call out to him. But the fear, the shame, the sheer disbelief of what was happening paralyzed her. She felt his weight on top of her, the rough texture of his hands against her skin. She felt the pain. Not just physical pain, but a deeper, more soul-crushing pain that seemed to tear through every part of her. This was her uncle. This was the man who had held her hand at her father's funeral. This was the man who had taught her how to ride a bike. This was the man who was supposed to protect her. And now, he was destroying her. When it was over, he stood up, adjusted his clothes, and looked down at her. She lay there, frozen, her body trembling, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even process what had just happened. "Don't tell anyone," he said, his voice calm, almost conversational. "No one will believe you anyway. You know that, right? I'm family. I'm trusted. Who's going to believe that I would do something like this?" And then he left. Just like that. He walked out of the room, closed the door behind him, and disappeared into the night. Amelia lay there for what felt like hours, staring at the ceiling, her mind blank. She could hear Nathan snoring softly in the living room, completely unaware of what had just happened. She wanted to go to him, to wake him up, to tell him. But she couldn't. The words wouldn't come. The shame was too heavy. The disbelief was too strong. How could this have happened? How could her Uncle Donald, the man she trusted more than almost anyone in the world, How could he do this to her? She pulled the blanket over her head and cried silently into the darkness. The next morning, Amelia woke up feeling like she was living in someone else's body. She moved through the apartment like a ghost, her movements mechanical, her mind numb. Nathan was in the kitchen making coffee, humming softly to himself. He turned when he heard her footsteps and smiled. "Morning, beautiful," he said, walking over to kiss her forehead. "Happy anniversary. Sorry I fell asleep on you last night. I was more tired than I thought." Amelia forced a smile. "It's okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan frowned. "You okay? You look pale." "I'm fine," she lied. "Just cramps, you know how it is." He nodded sympathetically and poured her a cup of coffee. "Why don't you take it easy today? I'll clean up around here." She nodded, took the coffee, and retreated to the bedroom. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the spot where Donald had stood just hours before. She could still smell him, still feel him. The memory was so vivid, so visceral, that she thought she might be sick. She wanted to tell Nathan. She wanted to scream, to cry, to make him understand what had happened. But every time she opened her mouth, the words got stuck in her throat. What would she even say? How could she explain that the man they both loved and trusted had done something so unthinkable? And what if Nathan didn't believe her? What if he thought she was lying or confused or, worse, what if he thought she had somehow invited it, somehow wanted it? The thought made her stomach churn. So she said nothing. Days turned into weeks, and Amelia tried to pretend that nothing had happened. She went to work, smiled at her students, and came home to Nathan every night. But inside, she was falling apart. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Donald's face, felt his hands on her body. She started avoiding family gatherings, making excuses whenever her parents invited them over. She couldn't bear the thought of seeing him again, of sitting across from him at the dinner table and pretending everything was normal. Nathan noticed the change. "You've been distant lately," he said one night as they sat on the couch. "Is everything okay? Are we okay?" "We're fine," she said quickly, too quickly. "I'm just stressed about work. The kids are a handful this year." He didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. And Amelia was grateful for that, even though she knew the silence was eating her alive. One afternoon, about a month after the assault, Amelia's mother called. "We're having a family barbecue this weekend," she said cheerfully. "Your father wants to fire up the grill, and Donald said he'll bring his famous potato salad. You and Nathan have to come." Amelia's heart sank. "I don't know, Mom. Nathan's been really busy with work." "Oh, come on, honey. It's been weeks since we've seen you. Everyone misses you, especially Donald. He was just asking about you the other day." Amelia felt bile rise in her throat. I'll see if we can make it," she stammered. "Great. I'll see you Saturday at 2. Love you." Amelia hung up the phone and sat down on the floor, her hands shaking. She couldn't do it. She couldn't go to that barbecue. She couldn't see him. But how could she explain that to her mother without telling her the truth? And if she told her the truth, would she even believe her? That night, Amelia had her first panic attack. She was in the shower, the hot water streaming over her body, when suddenly she couldn't breathe. Her chest tightened, her vision blurred, and she collapsed onto the tile floor, gasping for air. Nathan heard her cries and rushed in, pulling her out of the shower and wrapping her in a towel. "Amelia, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice frantic. "Talk to me. What's happening?" She couldn't answer. She just sobbed, her whole body shaking, the weight of the secret crushing her from the inside out. Nathan held her until she calmed down, but he knew something was deeply wrong. And for the first time, Amelia realized that she couldn't keep this to herself anymore. The silence was killing her. But how do you tell the person you love that the family they trust is built on a lie? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, Click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Let's pause here for a moment, because what Amelia experienced is not unique, it's not rare, and that's what makes it so terrifying. According to the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network, 1 in 6 women in America has been the victim of an attempted or completed rape in her lifetime, and the majority of sexual assaults are committed by someone the victim knows, family members, friends, people we trust. When we think about sexual assault, we often imagine a stranger in a dark alley, but the reality is much more insidious. The reality is that the people who hurt us are often the people who are supposed to protect us. They're the ones who sit at our dinner tables, who show up to our weddings, who hold our babies. They're the ones we trust. And that trust is what makes the betrayal so devastating. Amelia's story highlights something that's rarely talked about: the shame that comes with being assaulted during menstruation. For many women, menstruation is already a time of vulnerability, discomfort, and emotional sensitivity. Being violated during this time adds another layer of humiliation, a sense that even their most private, natural bodily functions have been invaded and disrespected. It's not just the body that's violated, it's the dignity, the autonomy, the sense of self. And then there's the silence. Why didn't Amelia tell anyone right away? Why do so many survivors wait weeks, months, or even years to come forward? The answer is complicated, but it's rooted in fear. Fear of not being believed, fear of being blamed, fear of tearing the family apart, fear of losing the life they know. Trauma does something to the brain. It can cause dissociation, where the mind essentially detaches from the body as a way of coping with unbearable pain. It can cause memory fragmentation, where the survivor remembers some details vividly, but can't piece together a clear timeline. It can cause shame, a deep, crushing shame that convinces the survivor that somehow, in some way, they are responsible for what happened to them. But let me be clear, it is never the survivor's fault. Never. It doesn't matter what they were wearing. It doesn't matter if they were alone. It doesn't matter if they were menstruating or sleeping or vulnerable in any way. The only person responsible for sexual assault is the person who commits it. So if you're listening to this and you've experienced something similar, I want you to hear this. You are not alone. You are not to blame. And you deserve to be believed, supported, and heard. There are resources available. The National Sexual Assault Hotline is available 24/7 at 1-800-656-HOPE. You can also visit rain.org for more information and support. And if you're someone who loves a survivor, please believe them, support them. Don't ask them why they didn't fight back, or why they didn't scream, or why they waited to tell you. Just listen, just be there. Because sometimes that's all they need. It was 2 months after the assault when Amelia finally broke her silence. She and Nathan were sitting on the couch one evening, watching a movie, when she suddenly started crying. Not the quiet, controlled crying she'd been doing in secret for weeks, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs that shook her entire body. Nathan turned off the TV and pulled her close. "Amelia, please," he begged. "Tell me what's going on. I can't help you if you won't talk to me." And so, through tears and broken sentences, she told him. She told him about the night Donald came into their apartment. She told him about the assault, about the pain, about the shame. She told him how she'd been carrying this weight alone for 2 months, how it had been eating her alive, how she didn't know if she could keep living like this. Nathan's face went through a range of emotions: confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally, heartbreak. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked, his voice breaking. "I was scared," Amelia whispered. "I was scared you wouldn't believe me. I was scared you'd think I was lying, or that I'd somehow, I don't know, let him on or something." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Amelia, I would never think that. Never. Do you understand me? What he did to you, that's not your fault. None of this is your fault." Hearing those words, Amelia broke down again. For the first time since the assault, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone in this. But telling Nathan was just the first step. The next step was deciding what to do about it. Nathan wanted to go to the police immediately, but Amelia hesitated. "If we report him, the whole family's going to find out," she said. "And you know how they are. They're going to defend him. They're going to say I'm lying, or that I misunderstood, or I don't know. I just can't deal with that right now." Nathan took her hands in his. "I understand," he said gently, "but he can't get away with this. What if he does this to someone else? What if he's already done it to someone else?" Amelia's blood ran cold. She hadn't thought about that. The idea that Donald might have hurt other people, that he might hurt someone else in the future. It was too much to bear. "We need to tell someone," Nathan said firmly. "Not just for you, but for everyone he might hurt in the future." Amelia nodded slowly. She knew he was right, but that didn't make it any less terrifying. The next day they went to the police station. Amelia sat in a small, sterile room and gave her statement to a female detective. The detective was kind, patient, and professional, but Amelia still felt like she was reliving the assault all over again. Every detail she had to recount, every question she had to answer, felt like another violation. "Did you resist?" the detective asked. "I tried," Amelia said, her voice shaking, "but he was stronger than me, and I was scared. I didn't know what to do." "Did you tell anyone right away?" "No." "Why not?" I don't know. I was in shock. I didn't think anyone would believe me." The detective nodded and made notes. "I believe you," she said softly, "and we're going to do everything we can to help you." But even with the detective's reassurance, Amelia knew the road ahead was going to be long and painful. Reporting the assault was just the beginning. Next would come the investigation, the interviews with family members, and eventually, the confrontation with Donald himself. And Amelia wasn't sure she was ready for that. At this point in Amelia's story, it's important to understand the dynamics of familial sexual abuse, because this isn't just about one man making one terrible decision. This is about a pattern of behavior, a pattern of grooming, manipulation, and betrayal that happens more often than we'd like to admit. Grooming is a process. It's not something that happens overnight. It's a slow, deliberate manipulation where the abuser builds trust with the victim and their family. They become the person everyone relies on, the person everyone loves, the person no one would ever suspect. And that's exactly the point. Because when the abuse is finally revealed, the abuser has already built up so much goodwill, so much trust, that people struggle to believe the victim. In Amelia's case, Donald had been grooming her and her family for years. He was the fun uncle, the dependable uncle, the uncle who was always there. He positioned himself as someone safe, someone trustworthy. And when he violated that trust, he knew that the family's disbelief would be his best defense. This is why so many survivors of familial abuse stay silent. Because they know that speaking out means risking everything. It means risking their relationships with the people they love. It means risking being called a liar, a troublemaker, someone who's just trying to tear the family apart. And for many survivors, that risk feels too great. But here's the truth. Silence protects no one. Silence protects the abuser. Silence allows them to continue hurting people. And silence ensures that the cycle of abuse continues. According to the Darkness to Light organization, 1 in 10 children will be sexually abused before their 18th birthday. And in 90% of those cases, the child knows the abuser. It's a coach, a teacher, a family friend, or a family member. People we trust. So what can we do about it? How do we protect the children and adults in our lives from this kind of abuse? It starts with education. It starts with having uncomfortable conversations about boundaries, about consent, about what to do if someone makes you feel unsafe. It starts with believing survivors when they come forward, even if it's hard, even if it challenges everything we thought we knew about someone. and it starts with understanding that abuse thrives in silence. The more we talk about it, the more we educate ourselves and our communities, the harder it becomes for abusers to hide. If you know someone who's gone through something like this, please share this video. Awareness can save a life. Do families talk openly enough about boundaries and abuse? Let us know in the comments. Because this conversation is too important to keep silent about. 2 weeks after Amelia filed her police report, the detective called with an update. They wanted to bring Donald in for questioning. They wanted to hear his side of the story. Amelia's stomach twisted at the thought of him sitting in that same sterile room, being asked the same questions she had been asked. What would he say? Would he deny it? Would he lie? Of course he would. That's what abusers do. The day of Donald's interrogation, Amelia stayed home. She couldn't bring herself to go to the station, couldn't bring herself to be anywhere near him. Instead, she sat on the couch, staring at her phone, waiting for an update from the detective. Hours passed, and finally, the detective called. He denied everything, she said bluntly. He said you've been under a lot of stress lately, that you've been distant from the family, and that he's worried you're having some kind of mental breakdown. He said you're making this up for attention. Amelia felt like she'd been punched in the gut. Of course he said that. Of course he turned it around on her. That's what he'd been planning all along. But here's the thing, the detective continued. His story doesn't add up. He said he never came to your apartment that night, but we pulled security footage from your building, and we can see him entering at 12:14 a.m. and leaving at 12:47 a.m., so we know he's lying. Amelia's heart raced. So what happens now? Now we build the case. We gather evidence, we interview witnesses, and we prepare for trial. But I have to be honest with you, Amelia. This is going to be hard. He's going to fight this, and your family is going to be pulled into it. Are you ready for that? Amelia closed her eyes. Was she ready? No. But did she have a choice? Also no. I'm ready, she said. The next few months were a nightmare. News of the investigation spread through the family like wildfire. Amelia's parents called, demanding to know what was going on. She told them the truth, and their reaction was exactly what she'd feared. That's impossible, her mother said, her voice shaking. Donald would never do something like that. You must be mistaken, honey. Maybe you had a bad dream, or maybe... Mom, I didn't have a bad dream, Amelia said firmly. He assaulted me, in my own home, on my anniversary, and I have proof. Her father got on the phone. Amelia, I don't know what's going on with you, but you need to think about what you're doing. You're tearing this family apart. Donald is your uncle. He loves you. He would never... He did, Dad, Amelia interrupted, tears streaming down her face. He did. And the fact that you can't believe me, that's exactly why I didn't tell you sooner. She hung up the phone and sobbed. Nathan held her, whispering that she was brave, that she was doing the right thing, that he was proud of her. But even his words couldn't ease the pain of her parents' disbelief. Over the next few weeks, the family fractured. Some relatives believed Amelia and reached out to offer support. Her cousin Emily called one night and said, I believe you, and I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. When Amelia asked what she meant, Emily's voice broke. He did something to me too, when I was younger. I never told anyone because I thought no one would believe me. Amelia's heart shattered. Donald had done this before. He had hurt other people, and they had all stayed silent, just like she had. But not everyone believed her. Some family members sided with Donald, insisting that Amelia was lying, that she was trying to destroy him, that she was mentally unstable. They stopped talking to her, stopped inviting her to family events, stopped acknowledging her existence, and that hurt more than Amelia could have imagined. The trial was scheduled for 6 months later. In the meantime, Amelia tried to rebuild her life. She started seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Lisa, who specialized in trauma. Dr. Lisa helped Amelia understand that what happened to her wasn't her fault, that her body's response to the trauma was normal, and that healing was possible. You survived, Dr. Lisa said during one session. That's the most important thing. You survived, and now you're taking your power back. Amelia held on to those words like a lifeline. When the trial finally began, Amelia had to sit in that courtroom and recount the assault in front of strangers, in front of a jury, in front of Donald himself. She had to describe the pain, the fear, the humiliation. She had to answer questions from Donald's defense attorney, questions designed to make her look like a liar, questions that implied she had somehow wanted this to happen. But she didn't break. She told her story, clearly and calmly, and when it was over, she looked Donald in the eye for the first time since that night. He looked away. The jury deliberated for 2 days, and when they came back, they delivered a guilty verdict on all counts. Donald was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Amelia sat in the courtroom, Nathan's hand in hers, and she cried. Not just tears of relief, but tears of grief. Grief for the family that had been shattered. Grief for the innocence that had been stolen. Grief for the girl she used to be, the girl who trusted everyone. The girl who believed that family meant safety. That girl was gone, but in her place was a woman who had fought back. A woman who had spoken her truth. A woman who had survived. In the months following the trial, Amelia began the long, difficult process of healing. Therapy helped. So did Nathan's unwavering support. But the real turning point came when Emily reached out again and asked if they could meet for coffee. They sat in a quiet cafe, 2 women who had been hurt by the same man, and they talked. They talked about the shame they had carried. They talked about the guilt they had felt. They talked about the fear that had kept them silent for so long, and as they talked, they realized something powerful. They weren't alone. "What if there are others?" Emily said quietly. "What if there are other women in the family or in his past who he hurt? What if they're still carrying this alone?" Amelia thought about it for a moment, and then she nodded. "Then we need to help them. We need to let them know that it's okay to speak up, that they'll be believed, that they're not alone." And that's how it started. Amelia and Emily created a support group for survivors of familial sexual abuse. They met once a week in a small community center, and slowly, other women began to join. Some were family members, others were strangers who had heard about the group through word of mouth, but they all had one thing in common. They had been hurt by someone they trusted, and they were tired of carrying that pain alone. In these meetings, Amelia found her purpose. She found healing not just for herself, but in helping others heal. She learned that speaking her truth had given other women the courage to speak theirs. And that was worth everything. Nathan stood by her through it all. Their marriage had been tested, no doubt, but it had also grown stronger. They learned to communicate more openly, to support each other through the hard days, to celebrate the small victories. And slowly they began to rebuild the life that Donald had tried to destroy. Amelia also began speaking publicly about her experience. She gave talks at schools, at community centers, at conferences. She talked about the importance of believing survivors, about the need for better education around consent and boundaries, about the devastating impact of familial abuse. And every time she told her story, she saw the faces in the audience. The faces of people who had been through the same thing, who had stayed silent for years, who were just now realizing that they weren't alone. One woman approached her after a talk and said, "Thank you. I've been carrying this for 30 years, and I've never told anyone. But hearing your story, it made me realize that maybe it's time I told mine." Amelia hugged her and whispered, "You're so brave, and I'm so proud of you." As for Donald, he remains in prison. Amelia doesn't think about him much anymore. She's moved past the anger, past the hatred, past the desire for revenge. She's focused on healing, on helping others, on building a life that's defined not by what happened to her, but by what she's done in spite of it. Her relationship with her parents is still complicated. They eventually came around, eventually apologized for not believing her at first. But the trust has been broken, and it will take time to rebuild. Some family members never came around. They still believe Donald's lies, still refuse to acknowledge what he did. And Amelia has made peace with that. She's learned that she can't control other people's reactions, can't force them to see the truth. All she can do is live her truth and surround herself with people who believe her, who support her, who love her. And that's enough. This story isn't about shame, it's about courage. The courage to speak, to heal, and to protect the next person who might be suffering in silence. Amelia's story is not unique. There are thousands of women and men who have experienced what she experienced, who have been betrayed by the people they trusted most, who have carried the weight of that betrayal alone, in silence, for years. But silence protects no one. Silence protects the abuser. Silence ensures that the cycle continues. And that's why stories like Amelia's are so important, because when survivors speak up, they give others the courage to do the same. They shine a light on the darkness. They break the cycle. If you or someone you love has experienced sexual abuse, please know that help is available. The National Sexual Assault Hotline is available 24/7 at 1-800-656-HOPE. You can also visit rain.org for more information and support. There are people who believe you, who will support you, and who will help you heal. And to the survivors listening to this, I want you to know that you are not alone. What happened to you was not your fault.